graduated in the top 6 of my class, but it was only 6 in her class. My mother taught school starting at Dungey, and she loved teaching. As a matter of fact, she taught 24/7. That's why I changed schools. She loved young people, and she believed that all young people could learn. That only thing that they had to do was be taught. And before you could teach them, you had to get their attention. And that's what she did. She called them her diamonds. And young people from all across this nation who she had an opportunity to influence their lives still remember her. She brought education to the classroom. So for a few moments, I want you to walk with me. I want you to walk with me down the streets of Oklahoma City, where I was born. I was lived on Northeast 3rd Street as a child. We as blacks could not live across A Street. We could not go to a restaurant and sit down and eat. We could not go to a restroom unless it was marked colored only. We could not drink out of a water fountain. We could not go to any school of our choosing. We could not go to the zoo except on Tuesdays. A lot of things we could not go to. And only because of one thing. That's because our skin was black. We could not determine that. We didn't ask God to give us any skin. I didn't. I didn't know what to ask for. I probably would have really been messed up if God had listened to me. So, because of the fact that we were victims of segregation, discrimination, bigotry, and hatred, we had a different on-site to history. While teaching school at Dungey, my mother wrote a play, Brother President, which was the story of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama. Oh, you know the story. When Rosa Parks wouldn't get off that bus, and they had the long bar count in Montgomery. She wrote a story, and her young people at Dungey presented that play. In the audience that night was a young man by the name of Herbert Wright, who was the National Youth Director of the NAACP. And Herbert Wright was so impressed with that play. After the standing ovation from the community, that he invited her to take one of her students to New York City. And you had to know my mother to understand what I'm getting ready to tell you next. My mother said, I can't take one student without taking them all. And Herbert Wright looked at her and said, now, Clara Luper, you know we don't have no money to take all these kids nowhere. And she said to him, give me a chance, because I'm not going to take one of my students without taking all these kids. So the patrons from Spencer, Oklahoma, sold catfish dinners, fried chicken dinners, popcorn, blow pops, pickles, and anything necessary to get the young people out of that community to New York City. What a decision they made in backing the young people in our community. I often, now that I've grown a little older, say I really think that my mother was touched by God because she sat down and made a plan to take us to New York City. She wanted to take us the northern route and bring us back to the south. Oh, she did that. And for the first time in our lives, we had an opportunity to walk into a restaurant and sit down and eat a hamburger. For the first time. As a child, that surprised all of us. Because we were not accustomed as black people from Oklahoma to being able to go to a restaurant and sit down and eat. I want you to understand that. Because I want you to understand when I sit down how far we've come. So, on the way to New York City, we had a different sense of pride. We had a different respect for ourselves. We thought we were somebody. We walked with our heads up, our chest out, knowing that, hey, we're somebody. Oh, I felt like what Harriet Tubman used to say, a little bit of freedom is a dangerous thing. And I looked at my hands and I said, what does that mean? That means that one of these days I'll know exactly what she's talking about. Oh, we put on that play in New York City. We were good. We were so good, they gave us several standing ovations. But then we had to come back. And we had to come back through the South, facing the same age-old discrimination, bigotry, and hatred. On our way back, the young people that were on that bus said, what can we do to make Oklahoma City better? Well, we threw out everything we know. But only to realize we didn't know much of anything, but we knew something. We knew we didn't like the way it was. We came back and negotiated with the Restaurant Association here. And they came back and told us, after talking to the people that were members of the Restaurant Association, that they decided that their people did not want to eat next to a black person. And I couldn't understand that because my grandmother was a maid in Nichols Hills. My grandmother used to live in the servant quarters to educate my mother. They cooked their food and nursed their babies, but we were not good enough to sit at a table. So we kept on thinking, irritated with the situation of our country and the democracy that it represented. One night at NAACP Youth Council meeting, and we had to meet in our front yard because we didn't have any place else to meet. I suggested that we would go downtown in Oklahoma City and go down to Cat's Drugstore because Cat's Drugstore was like a hub for our community. You had to change buses in order to get to Nichols Hills to go to work. You could spend all your money you made that week, but you couldn't go down there and sit down and have a Coke. They would serve you a hamburger, but you had to take that brown paper sack and go back around to the back of it where it's filthy, dirty, and nasty and eat that hamburger. So I made a motion that we would go down there and we would sit down until they served us. Now, I have a brother by the name of Calvin Looper. Calvin looked at me and said, you must be losing your mind. He said, you gonna get us all killed. The white folks gonna kill all of us because of your mouth. Well, my mother taught us to debate. So we had to debate the issue in youth council meeting. And she taught us to debate by taking example, who had the most sense, a man with hair or a bald-headed man? You know, simple things. So we had to debate the issue of whether or not we're going to get killed at Cat's Drugstore or we're going to go down there and sit. Well, history will reflect that I won that debate. And we went down to Cat's drugstore. 13 of us. And out of the 13 people, young people that went down to Cat's drugstore, 10 of us are still living. And we went down there. And we went down there and we sat down. And you talking about nervous. Them white folks sure was nervous. Now you know better than you sitting down here. You know we don't play that in Oklahoma. And we saw something that I've never seen before. I saw some of the people that I had run into as a child that became bitter to the fact that I wanted to sit at the lunch counter. So we had people that spat on us, people that kicked us, people that moved us off the seat that we were sitting in. And I could not understand, Reverend, how these were the Christian people that told us that they were Christians, yet were so bitter. I could not understand why they disliked us so much. And they didn't know nothing about us. They didn't know nothing about my national heritage and the work from whence I've come. So we sat down. And within 3 days, after we started the city in the Cat's drugstore, Cat's opened up its facilities across this nation, not across Oklahoma, but across this nation to blacks. Then we were on a war. The war was on. So we went from place to place to integrate Oklahoma City. Oh, it took a long time. It took a lot of patience. It took a lot of tears, but we were convinced that what we were doing was right. Because black people are the most forgiving people in the world. We forgive people everything, including slavery and how they have mistreated our folks. And even to this day, we're forgiven. I'm so glad that the young people here in Oklahoma City sat down. Because I want you to know, if we had not sat down here, then the young people of the United States would not have stood up at that time of history. You see the plaza in downtown Oklahoma City. This tells our story. And when you go downtown and to the plaza, we left one seat vacant down there. And that seat was left vacant, not because we didn't have anybody to put in it, but we left it vacant so you could sit down on it, so you could feel the fear and the hatred and the bitterness that we felt. We left it vacant because it's important to our young people to know that life is not easy. God did not promise us that our lives would be easy. There would be bumps in the road. But thank God for the bumps in the road, because if there had not been bumps in the road, we couldn't get up to the mountaintop. I was reading an article this weekend, and I've never seen it before. But in July of 1999, Martin Luther King spoke at the, did I say 1999? 1959, I'm sorry. Spoke at the NAACP National Convention. I was there, but I didn't remember. And at that time, he congratulated the young people in the United States for the job that they had done. And according to the Amsterdam News, that he had the students from Oklahoma City to stand up. Because he said that ignited the courage to continue in this fight. Although the road is tough and sometimes we felt that we couldn't take it, our people, own people, often turned against us and said, "Why don't you leave them white folks alone? Them white folks not bothering us. We can take our brown paper sack and eat in the back." But we continued. Until this day, we continue to fight against injustice. We are not free until all of us are free. And if democracy is to become a reality in this country, then we must continue to fight. My grandfather never had the opportunity to sleep in a hotel. He never had the opportunity to eat in a restaurant. But he continued to struggle. And my mother would ask him all the time, say, "Dad, will we ever be free?" And he would say, "Someday. Someday we will be free." Then as I grew up, I asked my mother, I said, "Mom, we pick it all the time. You've been to jail 26 times. You people talked about you, laughed at you, criticized and abused you, even the people in your own community, but you still fight against injustice. When will we be free? Will we ever be free?" And she said, "Someday, Marilyn. Someday." But then I had a daughter. And she said to me, "When will we be free, Mom? Will we ever be free as a race of people?" And I said to her, "Someday. Someday." But then I had a granddaughter. And that granddaughter asked the same age-old question. Will we ever be free? And her mother had to tell her, like I told her, that someday we will be free. But we cannot stop now. We must continue to struggle. You must vote and teach your children to vote. You cannot be complacent. And one thing I have to say to young people now, I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired and hearing you say what you can't take. Suppose you had to be out in the cotton field. Suppose you had to take that hog and try to make something out of it. Would you have created, or could you have come up with chitlins? Or could you have come up with pig feet? Learn how to use what you do have. And instead of criticizing your ancestry, sit down and talk to them because you can learn a lot because they have taught us a lot. They taught us the deep belief in faith and in a God. And as I close, Gayla, my mother has a sign over her door when she was living that I saw every day when times would get hard and when friends and they would laugh at me when I walked in the classroom with Douglas. Call me City and Squatter and lay in Looper. When things like that, when people talked about the shoes that we had after picketing for so long, and my mom would buy her students shoes because she wanted them to graduate. And I thought about when that white man threw a chimpanzee on me. And I thought about the injustices of the system and how she went without and worked 3 jobs to help somebody else's kids and keep her own. I thought about the struggle. And I said, I'm tired. I don't want to be in this struggle anymore. And then that voice came to me and said, "Oh, you're not tired. You're not tired yet. Just keep living. But you have a responsibility to the oncoming generations of your people to stand up against injustice." And the sign that was above her door, it said, And I want you to remember when times get hard for you, you say I can't take it. I want you to remember this: to believe in the sun when the sun doesn't shine, and to believe in the rain when the rain does not fall, and to believe in a God that you've never seen. So that's how we made it.
Thank you, Marilyn. Oh, I just love you. You may be seated. I wanted to know if anybody have any questions before we let her go. Pastor.